Hello YouTube! I'm Johnny Fudd from Fudd's Coin Rings. Today we're skipping the coin rings and we're going to make some earrings for a U.S. Army veteran. Taryn from Youngstown, Ohio requested these earrings and I'm taking you along with a tutorial. So get yourself a mojito, a couple shell casings. Now I'd show you how I remove the bullet from the shell, but I'm sure YouTube would demonetize me. So use your imagination. Check out the description below for the very few pieces that you're going to need to purchase to complete this project, and follow along if you so wish. The first step is to remove the primer end from your shell. Now, the way I do it is to smash the end and secure it in this handheld ring vise. This is just what I have on hand from what I do with coin ring making. Now, you may not have to smash the end if you decide to use vice grips or a vise or something else to secure that cartridge as you cut off the end. And again, because of what I do normally, I've got a jeweler saw. I realize most people don't have a jeweler saw. So a Dremel tool with the cutoff wheel will also work just fine. So however you decide to hold that shell, and however you decide to cut off the end, go ahead and get that done. Do it with both of them. So here's what we're left with. Now, the next step is to punch the primer out. You could save yourself a lot of trouble if you know someone that reloads and just have those primers removed ahead of time. But I'm going to use this punch down block. I'm going to put the primer down and center it over one of the holes. If you don't have one of these, simply drill a hole in a piece of hardwood and do the same thing. So I got a punch centered right over the primer, and out it came. Go with the next one. Okay, so now you can see where I cut the back off is definitely not smooth enough to be putting on somebody's earlobe. So I'm going to file that down. Then I'm going to switch to sandpaper and polish it off nice and smooth so it'll be safe for skin. After filing, I found that one of the things that works best for smoothing out the backside is one of these fingernail sanding, buffing things. I picked these up at the local pharmacy, and I'm just going to rub the back end of the shell on here. And the result is going to get really smooth. So go ahead and give that a couple rounds on the fingernail sander, and then we'll be back. Now these will be bezel set stones. In our case, we're going to use turquoise. And I purchased these from Rio Grande. Now, if you're using a standard handgun round, a 4mm tube will fit tight where the primer sat. Now, you're going to have to do some research if it's anything other than your standard handgun rounds. 40, 38 special, 380, 9mm. Those all have the same primer. So do some research if you're using anything other than a standard handgun round. Now, I'm going to press this in. I'm going to be using the same press that I use for my coin ring making. This is a 6-ton hydraulic press. When I press the bezel in, I want the cartridge facing out. And looking at this tube, there's a flat side without a bezel and there's a side with a bezel. Don't screw this up. The bezel goes out. So you've got the outside of the cartridge and the bezel going out, just like that. I'm going to lube it up with some Pepe lube so it presses in a little better. It is a tight fit. If you don't have a jack, you can gently tap this in with a hammer, but I'd recommend putting a piece of wood or something to soften the blow above it. And there we are. Now, before you solder, it's imperative that the piece is totally clean. And I've already done that. I've also already applied flux. This is the flux that I use. Seems to work pretty good. And in remembering that the solder will flow anywhere that flux is, you should be very careful to only apply it sparingly. I've also applied the flux to the sterling silver posts. And the reason that I did that is because this is a borax and water solution, and as you heat up the pieces, the borax will bubble as the water boils out, and if we were to put the pieces together with the flux, it's more likely to move. So I'm going to go ahead and boil out the water. So just gently applying heat here. Okay, and then I'm going to apply the post right to the back of the stud. And it just so happens that the back of these studs match up with the tube setting perfectly. So we're going to have these dead center. It's still very hot. Okay, then I'm going to use some chip solder. Now there's different grades of solder. It's based on the melting point. The easy melts at the lowest temperature. The reason I'm doing that is because these posts are liable to melt. So I'll put a couple on the solder stone. It's probably a bit much. And very carefully place them sparingly around the base of the post. It's important to remember when you're soldering that solder will flow toward the heat. So we're not trying to heat the solder, we're trying to heat the piece. In this case, I'm going to direct the heat toward the brass shell. The reason being, again, is because that post is prone to melting. Hopefully we don't experience that in this tutorial. Okay, everything looks exactly as it should. I'm very gently going to heat the shell casing. You see the flux is bubbling. Solder should begin to, there it goes. We got good flow. And we'll move to the next one. I'm going to let those cool naturally. If you quench them too quickly, that solder joint could break. Now, after soldering, the earrings went into the jeweler's pickle, which is an acid that reacts with the tarnish on most non-ferrous metals. And we cleaned it up with some steel wool. These are the turquoise that are going into the earrings. They're American mined, which I thought was significant since this is going to a veteran. Now, I use this little gem setter, which is for stud earrings. You by no means have to get one of these. They're kind of crazy expensive for what they actually do. But it helps if you do a lot of these. So we close it in there like that. And tighten her down. So now the stud is in there secure. And then we just gently check the fit of the turquoise. Doesn't quite want to fit in there. I'm going to use this bezel tool and open it up just a little bit. Now, since we soldered this bezel, we actually softened it. It'll bend really easy. Use caution when you're bending this out. You can use any kind of very smooth tool to do this. You don't have to have something like this. You could even use a butter knife that you've sharpened on a bench grinder. We'll check the fit again. Close, but still not quite. The turquoise fits, but it is tight. I'm going to press it in. This is where this tool is kind of nice. If you don't have one of these, you'd be trying to hold that stud in your hand. Okay. And then we're going to set the stone just by gently bending that bezel over the side of the stone. Now that it's in there, I'm going to loosen it in here. I'm going to pull these pegs out. That way I can just secure it as I go all the way around and make sure there's a uniform, the silver around the turquoise is a uniform bezel. So here we are. They look pretty cool, but what we got to do now is Have you ever seen turquoise jewelry with brass? Nah, we're going to silver plate it because silver and turquoise go really well together. So now they have to be super, super clean. Now in this process, I'm going to buff them gently with a flex shaft. I'm going to throw them in the ultrasonic cleaner, and then we're going to see how they look. So at home, some jeweler's polish and a microfiber cloth, and then use just soap and water to get that off. After that, don't touch them. Just use gloves. So here are our cleaned earring studs, and most of you will probably stop here, but I'm going to go ahead and silver plate them. We're going to be using a silver cyanide solution. And make sure if you do this, any cleaning or rinsing that you do is followed up with distilled water. So we've got our silver suspended in the cyanide solution, the positive charge connected to a fine silver bar, and I'm going to apply about 3 volts to it. And immediately, silver is going to cling to the brass. Well, really it'll cling to the silver too, but this will give it a real nice finish. We're hitting it hard, and it's important to remember that whatever finish was on this to begin with is the finish that we'll end with. Now we've got a beautiful white color on these earrings. I'd like to have a little bit more luster, so I'm going to use one of the least abrasive polishes that I have. That's Right Silver Cream. That's for primarily silver-plated cutlery. I've got my cotton wheel on the flex shaft. And I just want a tiny bit on there. It'll probably go everywhere if I put too much. So that's probably plenty. We'll cram that in there. And I just want to very carefully hit this. If we hit it too much, we're just going to take the silver right back off again. In which case we can repolish, or replate, I should say. No need to make more work for ourselves. At home, you can just either do this with a Dremel tool. Well, chances are you're probably not going to be silver plating at home, but if you do, a Dremel tool or just the sponge that comes with the Right Silver Cream. Now if you use a flex shaft or a Dremel tool, be careful not to bend this post in the back. I've done it many times. Okay, I'm going to rinse it off with some water, toss it again into the ultrasonic cleaner, and we should be calling it a day. Get the other one done real quick. And there we are. Always make sure the posts are straight. And I'll give them one more wipe down and get my fingerprints off. And package them up for tearing. Well, hopefully these make for another happy customer. Thanks, folks, for watching. Please check out fudscoinrings.com and the newly launched fidelafinejewelry.com. That's your more traditional engagement rings, pendants, stuff like that. Fud's Coin Rings, you'll find all kinds of different coin rings and other art made from coins. If you like these videos, please like and subscribe. And remember, if you're ever on fire, stop, drop, and roll.